All right. The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, a counterintuitive approach to living a good life by Mark Manson. And this is a New York Times bestseller, so many of you have probably heard of this book. And if you haven't, I suggest you give it a read. It's pretty good. It has a tone. A lot of people might not like the tone, and a lot of people might like. It's kind of, I'd call it cheesy, but I don't know how to describe it to the best. Uses the F word a lot. It's kind of like one of those, but anyways, it's pretty good, and it has a lot of valuable points in it for sure. So definitely take it with a grain of salt if you're not about the writing style. Anyways, in this video, I'm going to talk a little about what are the best things that I got from the book. And the first one is failure is always going to be part of the process. So he says you shouldn't cry about failure. You should embrace it, and really, you should learn from your failures. Right? Failure should be sort of a litmus test, I should say. I don't know the right word for it, but if you're not learning from your failures, then what are you doing? You just failed and then you don't learn anything, then nothing happened. He also says that you shouldn't be afraid of failure because it's normal to fail at many things. And in a sense, you don't really have to call this a failure, but rather a better word in my opinion would be an experiment, right? You tried something, did it work? Okay, let's do that some more. You tried something and it didn't work. Okay, that's a it's an experiment. Now you know what doesn't work. So now you go back to the drawing board. What will work? Do you see the difference? A lot of people will say, okay, it didn't work, I failed, I give up. That's a very dangerous stage of life to be in, and that can lead to learned helplessness. And there's a famous study on this, and it's a brief history of what learned helplessness is. It's basically you do something, you fail, and then you think you'll always fail. But had you tried again in a different way, you could succeed. And many of us, me and you included, we suffer and learned helplessness in many areas of our life. So in this book, he suggests instead of looking at failure as some prophecy for how the rest of your life is going to be, take it and learn from it and grow. And that takes me to the next point that I got from this book, and I wrote down this. It says, no matter what you do in life, you will always have problems. The point of life is therefore to solve problems. That's very powerful, okay? In life, no matter what, remember when you were 12 years old and you got your first cell phone? And before you got the cell phone, you said, you know what, Mom, if you gave me the cell phone, I would be the happiest boy ever. I would never, ever, ever do anything wrong. Or for example, the first time you fell in love, you said, if I am able to ask whoever out and go out with them, I will be forever happy and yada, yada, yada. But then once you do it, guess what? A whole new set of problems comes up. And that's the point of life, okay? Rich people have problems too, just like poor people. The point of life is therefore just to solve your problems and to keep growing, right? There's always going to be problems, so don't fall into the fallacy or the false thinking belief that one day all your problems will be solved. That's not true. You will always have problems, no matter. They may be big or small, but there will always be something for you to do. That's just you fighting against entropy. All right? If you don't clean the house every day, if you don't clean your teeth or your body, you're going to have a problem. You're going to start smelling, you're going to get dirty. This brings me to my next point, and it is Mark Manson in the book he suggests that when you're deciding what you want from life, what values or what type of the path that you want to take, don't think about the rewards. Well, okay, it's important to think about the rewards, but don't over focus on them because in general, we all want the same things. Do we not all want to be happy? Do we not all want to be rich, fall in love, healthy? We all do. But not all of us get that. Why not? Well, he says instead of focusing on what you want, focus on what type of pains that you're willing to go through to get the rewards. In the book, he gives an example that he wanted to be a rock star, but he didn't really want to be a rock star. He didn't want to go through the pain of going on the road every day, playing these junky joints, doing all these things, practicing the guitar for 10 hours a day, doing whatever it needed to be you had to do to become a rock star. You see the difference here? So, for example, you might want to be healthy, and your friend Claire also might want to be healthy. Now, the difference between you and Claire is maybe that you're willing to go to the gym. That's your pain that you're willing to suffer to be healthy, while Claire says, screw that, I'm just going to eat pizza every day because I'm not willing to suffer the pain of eating a vegetable or stepping foot in YMCA. So that's a pretty good, I thought that was a pretty good point from this book. Uh, Another thing he says that in life it's very important that you have a higher purpose. And this goes back to how we talked about that there is always problems with problems in life. So you're going to suffer a little bit for everything. And without a higher purpose, it's kind of hard to suffer just for yourself. There's something about it in us humans that when we have a higher purpose and we suffer for a higher thing, whether it be our country or our loved one or anything like that, we tend to get more joy from it. Another point he says is do not act entitled. The world does not revolve around you, and I put this in brackets, meaning that your life is neither the most important slash best or the least important slash worst in the world. So sometimes we think of entitlement, we think of the classic narcissist. We think of the guy who, or girl, who thinks that they deserve more respect than everybody else. They deserve more of the pie, really. And while that is a form of entitlement that we should avoid because that's just not right, there's also a side of the coin that we need to talk about, and it's the entitled person who says that all the worst things always happen to them, that things never go their way, or people never shake their hand. I don't know. The problem with this is you also assume when you say you're the worst or have the worst situation in the world, that you're somehow special, that some divine way, some reason that you deserve or you get stuck with all these other consequences. Again, you should avoid this. If you're having a bad day, you must realize that everybody has a bad day. You are not entitled or some special person so that your day is so bad. 100,000 people die every day. Okay, that's 100,000 families, give or take. Of course, there could be maybe 50,000 families affected by, two people die in one family, but regardless, it's that. I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I'm just trying to get the point that bad things happen to all people, and just try to look at it in a good way, I guess. And the last thing that I want to talk about from this book is Mark Manson gives a lot of values that he thinks are things that he doesn't say that you have to live by them, but they're good examples of things that good values that you should have in your life. And before I get into the values that he said that there are 3 components for what makes a good value. And the 3 components are your values are based on the reality. So if you have a value, for example, of being popular, it might not be based on reality if the way you measure that is what other people think of you, because that's not in reality. It's also not a good value because it's out of your control, but it's different. Like or what if a value was to be honest? You're either honest or you're not. If you tell the truth or you're not, that's reality based. It's not made from somebody's perception. I hope I'm making it clear. It's not made in somebody's head. It's made in reality. It's either happening or not happening. The next point that he says that makes a good value is your values should make the world a better place. It's pretty self-explanatory here, but I'm assuming that he just wanted to be a little bit moral here. And it's a good rule to live by, right? If you can make the world a better place from your values, and everybody had values that had these components, I'm sure the world would actually be a better place. I don't know, obviously, but who knows? And the third thing that makes a good value is that the value should be immediate / controllable, meaning that you could take action right now to act towards your value. Like I said a second ago, if one of your values was, for example, to be honest, you could be honest right now, or you could lie right now, and you control that, and it's immediate. Like either you do it or you don't, and it's going to happen right now, and you're going to know if your value is being acted upon or against at this moment. So now, without further ado, let's get into the values that he says he likes. The first value he says he likes is responsibility, and I'll go a little bit further than that. It's more of an internal locus of control. Now, if you haven't heard of what that is, there's an internal locus control and external locus control. And I'll give a definition of both, and you can see which one you fall into, because there's nothing wrong with either or, but Mark put a value on having an internal one, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. But so an external locus of control would be somebody who says that, say they're driving down the street and their gas runs out of, or the car runs out of gas, sorry. This person with an external locus of control would look to external circumstances for why that's happening to them, right? They'd say, oh, why is there no gas? My husband didn't put gas in the car like he should have, or well, there's no gas and I don't have enough money. It's not fair. Like, we need more money. Like, the economy should give me gas for free or something. Whereas somebody in the same situation with internal locus of control might say, oh, I should have put gas in. That's my fault. I forgot, or I was too lazy, or I was careless. They would say it was their fault. It came from inside of them for the reason why it happened, where external locus of control could say something else outside of their control happened, which caused them not to have gas. Now back to the value that Mark has. He says responsibility, but not just responsibility. It's really taking accountability, or being accountable, I should say, for everything that happens in your life. So he says that if you get hit by a car, you need to take responsibility. Even if it's not your fault, you need to be accountable for what happens, maybe not before, but afterwards. He says, even if a event is not your fault, you are always responsible for how you react to that event afterwards. And in this responsibility, you have to make the right decisions and do the right things. So that might be, instead of crying about it, taking action to fix it, or doing whatever you need to do to fight entropy and make your life better in whatever way. Now, the next value that he has is, I just wrote down, it says, you're wrong. And this can be summarized in the short little story. If you think back to when you were 16, or if you're 16 now, think back to your 12, when you were 12 years old. Think of how you thought of the world. And I would guess that you probably think of it a little differently than you do now. Excuse me. You think of it differently than you do now, right? When you were 16, you might think that driving the car would be the coolest thing ever, but now you think driving the car is whatever. When you're 16, you might think that comic books were the coolest thing ever. But then you grew a little older, realized that now you're more into NASCAR, right? What we're getting at here is you got to realize that your beliefs and are always changing, and that you're in general are wrong, and you will always be wrong. But that's not to say that you're not getting any less wrong, because every day you learn something new, you get a little less wrong, and you learn. Really, this value is just saying that not to be closed-minded and realize that your beliefs are going to change, and that in that way you must have an open mind to allow them to change. The last value that he has is that you should embrace failure, and that's really just to say that don't be scared of failure. Again, I talked about this at the beginning, but realize it makes you better, and if there was no failure, then there could be no success. Now, I think I have a quote here. Yes, and this is a great quote from the book. I think it sums up the general gist of the book, and it says, when you spend your time giving a F about trivial things, then you don't have the time to care about the important ones. Honestly, man, I don't even remember why I put this quote in here, but it's pretty good. I mean, if you spend your time like caring about all this like BS, like, you know, you're gonna have to like no time to spend with caring about the important things, like maybe your family, being honest, taking accountability for everything. I give this book a 9 out of 10. I was all over the place in this commentary, and hopefully the next one's better. Anyway, see you later.